Daehan High School is thrown into shock when student Park Dae-suk takes his own life by jumping from the school rooftop. Among the witnesses is Jae-young-min, a student who knows exactly what drove Dae-suk to such a tragic end. Not long before his death, Dae-suk had tried to stand up to the school's most feared bully, Ryu Jun-hyung, after watching him disrespect a substitute teacher. That single act of courage turned Dae-suk into the school's newest target. The bullying became relentless, while Jae-young-min, who had previously been the outcast, was briefly spared. Although Jae-young-min considers reporting the abuse, he quickly realizes that even the teachers are terrified of Jun-hyung and the influence of his powerful father, Assemblyman Ryu Gwang-pil. After Dae-suk's death, Jae-young-min hopes justice will finally be served, but nothing changes. The bullies continue tormenting students, and he once again becomes their favorite victim. Crushed by hopelessness, he even considers taking his own life before fear pulls him back from the edge. The situation reaches a breaking point when Jun-hyung's friend Gwang-soo violently attacks Jae-young-min in the school hallway while everyone watches in silence. Just then, Na Wajin steps in and effortlessly takes down Gwang-soo. When Jun-hyung tries to turn the situation against him, Wajin makes it clear that he isn't intimidated. Introducing himself as an inspector from the newly established Educational Rights Protection Bureau, ERPB, Wajin confronts the school's leadership. He openly accuses them of covering up Dae-suk's suicide and protecting the bullies through corruption and influence. Despite warnings about Gwang-pil's political power, Wajin refuses to back down and takes over as the homeroom teacher of Dae-suk's class. From his very first day, Wajin shakes the students' world. He refuses to tolerate disrespect, punishes those who mock Dae-suk's death, and forces the class to experience discipline they have never known before. Even Jun-hyung quickly discovers that his usual tactics no longer work. Whether in the classroom or cafeteria, Wajin consistently puts him in his place and holds him accountable for his actions. Determined to escape punishment, Jun-hyung tries manipulating both his father and the public. He even injures himself to frame Wajin for abuse. While Gwang-pil uses his influence to pressure government officials and shut down the ERPB, Wajin remains unfazed. As tensions rise, Jae-young-min continues to suffer at the hands of the bullies. After another brutal attack, he once again considers ending his life. This time, Wajin intervenes and encourages him to stop blaming himself and start fighting for his future. Though Jae-young-min struggles to believe change is possible, Wajin refuses to give up on him. Meanwhile, the ERPB launches its own investigation into Gwang-pil. During a public campaign event, shocking allegations involving bribery, corruption, and sexual assault suddenly surface. The scandal spreads rapidly, destroying his political career overnight. Realizing he has been outmaneuvered, Gwang-pil watches helplessly as his secrets come to light. Before long, he is arrested, and Jun-hyung's role in Dae-suk's suffering is finally exposed. Back at school, the balance of power shifts dramatically. The same students who once followed Jun-hyung turn against him, leaving him isolated and abandoned. Jae-young-min struggles with guilt over his inability to protect Dae-suk, but Wajin reminds him that the responsibility belongs solely to the bullies. Consumed by anger and desperation, Jun-hyung attempts one final act of revenge by trapping his former friends inside a classroom and trying to set the building on fire. Wajin confronts him directly, forcing him to face the consequences of everything he has done. Cornered at last, Jun-hyung breaks down as Wajin reminds him of the pain he inflicted on Dae-suk. The truth behind Dae-suk's tragedy is finally revealed. Despite repeated attempts by Dae-suk and his father to report the bullying, the school refused to act. Gwang-pil's influence eventually destroyed the family's livelihood, leaving Dae-suk feeling like a burden to his struggling father. Unable to see a way forward, he chose to end his life. With the case reopened, Jun-hyung and his accomplices are arrested, and justice finally begins to take shape. Although Jae-young-min never sees Wajin again after those events, the students of Daehan High School never forget the man who stood up to the bullies when no one else would. Elsewhere, Wajin and Minister Choi Gang-suk quietly visit Choi Ji-yoon's grave, paying their respects before moving on to their next mission. The fallout from Jun-hyung's case quickly spreads across the country. Videos exposing the brutal bullying at Daehan High School flood social media, alongside footage of Na Wajin delivering his own brand of justice. While many people praise the Educational Rights Protection Bureau, ERPB, for finally taking action against school violence, critics argue that the organization has too much power and should be dismantled. Despite the controversy, Minister Choi Gang-suk stands firmly behind the bureau. He publicly declares that the education system has suffered for far too long because of unchecked bullying and promises that the ERPB will continue targeting students who abuse their power over others. His stance, however, creates tension within the political world, where several influential figures begin viewing the Bureau as a growing threat. Attention soon shifts to Gun High Tech School, a notorious institution known for producing future gang members and criminals. Most teachers avoid working there, and the students have created a culture where violence and intimidation are treated as normal. Among the new arrivals is Bong Gunda, a student who pays a senior named Inbium for protection. Unfortunately, his attempt to stay out of trouble fails almost immediately when he becomes caught up in a violent conflict between different student groups. Through another student, Hyung-ju, he learns that many of the fights are fueled by students competing for the attention of a rising gangster named Jang Gwon-hyuk. The school's toxic environment becomes even more apparent when Song-hwan, one of the most feared students, forces Gunda and Hyung-ju into a fight. The loser is declared the group's punching bag. Hyung-ju deliberately throws the match and silently endures repeated abuse while the other students cheer it on, hoping to impress Gwon-hyuk. Concerned by the growing influence of gang culture, one of the school's teachers reaches out to the ERPB for help. Before long, Wajin arrives to investigate. Away from school, Gunda and Hyung-ju spend time together and open up about their lives. Hyung-ju reveals that financial hardship left him with no choice but to attend Gun High Tech School. Despite everything he endures, he remains determined to build a better future, earning Gunda's admiration. Wajin soon introduces himself to the students and assures Hyung-ju that the bullying will not continue. At the same time, a surprising secret comes to light. Gunda is actually the ERPB's deputy director, working undercover to gather evidence from within the school. To expose the students' behavior, he intentionally allows himself to be bullied while feeding information back to the Bureau. Following Wajin's instructions, Gunda helps gather the troublemakers in the gymnasium. The students immediately challenge Wajin's authority, but he responds by giving them a simple choice: defeat him or follow his rules. Confident in their numbers, they rush him all at once, only to be effortlessly defeated. With control established, Wajin introduces strict schedules and structured lessons designed to get the students back on track academically. The students resist at every opportunity, but Wajin remains relentless. Whether dealing with excuses about missing school supplies or outright threats involving weapons, he refuses to let them dictate the rules. Realizing that traditional lessons may not connect with everyone, Wajin takes a different approach and brings the class to the school's garage. There, he teaches them practical skills by having them repair vehicles and work together. Even then, Song-hwan and Inbium continue testing his patience. To teach the two boys a lesson, Wajin takes them on a terrifying drive around campus in a damaged vehicle. The experience leaves them shaken and far less eager to challenge him. Gradually, many students begin respecting him, impressed by both his courage and determination. Outside the school, political opponents continue investigating Wajin's background. They discover that he previously served in the military and that much of his history is being protected by the National Intelligence Service, making him even more mysterious. Back at school, the bullying persists despite Wajin's efforts. When Song-hwan and Inbium target Hyung-ju once again, Wajin intervenes. Surprisingly, Hyung-ju tries to stop him from punishing the bullies, worried that escalating the conflict will only make things worse for everyone involved. That night, Song-hwan and Inbium sneak out to meet Jang Gwon-hyuk. Gunda unexpectedly joins them, helping them bypass the school's security measures. The group eventually arrives at a nightclub where Gwon-hyuk is waiting. During the meeting, the students complain about Wajin and accuse the ERPB of making their lives miserable. The next day, Gwon-hyuk boldly arrives at the school on a motorcycle, instantly capturing the students' attention. He challenges Wajin in front of everyone and appears to knock him unconscious during their fight. The students celebrate, believing they have finally found someone capable of defeating the feared inspector. Their excitement is short-lived. Wajin gets back to his feet and reveals that he anticipated the entire confrontation. What follows is a one-sided beating that completely destroys Gwon-hyuk's reputation. In front of the students who once idolized him, the gangster is humiliated and left helpless. At the same time, Gang Suk faces criticism during a televised political debate. His opponent accuses him of turning schools into military camps by employing a former soldier like Wajin. Gang Suk defends the Bureau, arguing that extreme situations require strong action and that students deserve protection from those who terrorize others. Meanwhile, Gwon Hyok's criminal associates arrive at the school looking for revenge. Hwa-jin faces them alone, taking on armed gangsters in a brutal confrontation that leaves everyone watching in stunned silence. By the end of the fight, the gang's influence over the school is shattered. Seeing their idols defeated, Song-hwan and In-beom finally break down and apologize for their behavior. At Hwa-jin's insistence, they personally apologize to Hyung-ju, who is overwhelmed with emotion after enduring so much suffering in silence. Hwa-jin makes it clear that students who refuse to study have the freedom to waste their own futures, but they have no right to drag others down with them. His words leave a lasting impression on the class. Not long afterward, police officers arrive and arrest Gwon Hyok and the gang members. The school's culture begins changing almost immediately. Tattoos are removed, smoking is banned, motorcycles disappear from campus, and students finally begin focusing on their education. For the first time in a long while, Hyung-ju can concentrate on building the future he always dreamed of. As peace returns to Gun High-Tech School, the members of the ERPB gather together and reflect on another successful mission. Gunda jokingly complains about how much money he spent during the undercover operation, while Hwa-jin teases him and Gang-suk tells him to file an expense report. Elsewhere, Gang-suk's political rival uncovers photographs connecting him and Hwa-jin to Jae-yoon's funeral, hinting that a deeper mystery surrounding the two men may soon come to light. A glimpse into the past reveals a happier time when Jae-yoon was still alive. While enjoying a walk with Hwa-jin during his military leave, she notices a group of students smoking in a park and immediately steps in to stop them. Watching her stand up for what she believes in leaves Hwa-jin smiling with pride. That memory sharply contrasts with the painful events that follow. The man responsible for Jae-yoon's death, Cho Gyu-cheol, stands trial and shocks everyone with his final statement. Instead of showing remorse, he claims that he killed her because he loved her. Since he is still a minor, the court hands down a relatively light sentence of only a few years in prison. The verdict devastates Hwa-jin. Overcome with rage, he attempts to run Gyu-cheol over outside the courthouse. Before tragedy can strike again, Gang-suk intervenes and stops him. Later, he asks Hwa-jin to be patient and shares his dream of creating an organization capable of protecting teachers and students from cases like Jae-yoon's. That vision would eventually become the Educational Rights Protection Bureau. Back in the present, Hwa-jin, Gang-suk, and Gunda discuss a troubling new case involving Soyeon Girls' School. A teacher named Young Seon-young has become the target of intense public criticism after a student accused her of abuse online. Another teacher, Mr. Ko Young-soo, was previously accused of sexual harassment and later took his own life after the allegations destroyed his reputation. As the team investigates, the truth behind the scandal begins to emerge. Han Yuri, a popular student influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers, has been using social media to manipulate public opinion. What started as a simple disagreement over phone use in class spiraled into a campaign of edited videos, false accusations, and online harassment. After being told to put her phone away during class, Yuri secretly edits footage to make Ms. Young appear cruel and abusive. The video quickly gains attention online. When Mr. Ko tries to convince her to remove it, Yuri retaliates by accusing him of sexual misconduct. The accusation spreads like wildfire, forcing him to resign. Unable to cope with the humiliation and relentless public attacks, he eventually takes his own life. Ms. Young becomes Yuri's next target. During a private conversation, Yuri pretends that Mr. Ko abused her and secretly live-streams the interaction. Before long, Ms. Young is flooded with hate from viewers who know nothing about the truth. Instead of defending his teacher, the principal attempts to appease Yuri by supporting her influencer ambitions and giving her whatever she wants. Determined to uncover what is really happening, Hwa-jin brings in a new member of the ERPB, former soldier Im Han-rim. Tough, fearless, and every bit as intimidating as Hwa-jin, she quickly makes her presence known at Soyeon Girls' School. Posing as a trainee teacher, Han-rim immediately notices how the students disrespect Ms. Young. She wastes no time confronting them, even smashing Yuri's phone when the student refuses to stop live-streaming during class. Soon after, Hwa-jin arrives and formally announces the Bureau's investigation. Cameras and monitoring equipment are installed throughout the school, while students' phones are confiscated to prevent further abuse. As the investigation progresses, Han-rim discovers that Yuri and her friends have been secretly mocking and cyberbullying Ms. Young online for months. The teacher remains completely unaware of the cruel posts being shared behind her back. When Han-rim exposes the harassment, She punishes the students and begins gathering evidence against them. Meanwhile, Ms. Jung's life continues falling apart. The rumors surrounding her make it nearly impossible to find work elsewhere, and even people she once trusted begin distancing themselves from her. The emotional toll becomes overwhelming, leaving her questioning whether she should continue teaching at all. Unexpectedly, Yuri and her friends begin treating Ms. Jung kindly. While the teacher hopes the students are genuinely changing, Hanrim suspects they are simply preparing another scheme. Her concerns prove justified when Yuri invites Ms. Jung to participate in a livestream designed to publicly criticize the ERPB. The pressure becomes too much for Ms. Jung to handle. During a breakdown at school, Wajin comforts her and shares the story of Jae-yoon's death. He explains that the bureau became involved because several students secretly asked for help protecting Ms. Jung from Yuri's harassment. Realizing that some students genuinely care about her brings Ms. Jung to tears. Encouraged by Wajin's words, she finally decides to stop living in fear. The next day, Ms. Jung walks into class with a new sense of confidence. When Yuri attempts to pressure her about the live stream, she refuses. Instead, she calls the student to the front of the classroom, challenges her to solve a math problem, and firmly reestablishes her authority as a teacher. For the first time, Yuri is the one left speechless. Watching from the sidelines, Hanrim is delighted to see Ms. Jung finally standing up for herself. Realizing she is losing control, Yuri turns back to social media. However, Gunda is already one step ahead. He deletes her online accounts and releases evidence proving that she fabricated the allegations against Mr. Ko. The truth spreads rapidly, destroying the false image Yuri spent years building. Cornered and desperate, Yuri snaps. Armed with a knife, she storms into Ms. Jung's apartment and blames the teacher for ruining her life. The confrontation quickly turns violent. During the struggle, Ms. Jung falls from the balcony, but Wajin arrives just in time to catch her. Both plunge downward, with Wajin taking the full impact to save her life. At the same moment, Hanrim confronts Yuri. Ignoring the blade in the girl's hands, she grabs it barehanded and forces her to stop. Rather than allowing Yuri to escape through death, Hanrim tells her to face the consequences of her actions and live with the damage she caused. Later, Gunda treats Hanrim's wounded hand while Wajin recovers from his injuries. Despite everything they endured, the case finally comes to an end. The following day, Gang-suk publicly announces the results of the investigation and reveals that the ERPB will begin actively monitoring student social media activity to prevent similar incidents in the future. Elsewhere, Gang-suk's political rivals prepare to strike back. Armed with photographs linking him and Wajin to Jae-yoon's funeral, they plan to expose what they believe is the Bureau's true purpose. Convinced that the ERPB was created as a personal act of revenge for Jae-yoon's death, they prepare a press conference that could threaten everything Wajin and Gang-suk have built. The controversy surrounding the ERPB continues to grow as Gang-suk and his team watch a press conference held by the opposition. The politicians accuse Gang-suk of creating the bureau for personal reasons tied to Jae-yoon's death. Curious about the allegations, Hanrim asks Wajin whether there is any truth behind them, prompting him to remind her of the events that led to the bureau's creation. Meanwhile, Gunda quietly works on a transfer request, hoping to leave the team. Gang-suk notices the application and immediately rejects it, demanding a better explanation before he'll even consider approving it. Before the conversation can continue, the team receives a disturbing report from Chukming Foreign Language High School. A video showing a student physically attacking a respected teacher has gone viral, and the ERPB is asked to investigate. Upon arriving at the school, Gunda explains that the teacher involved, Cheon Sang-yeol, played a major role in making the institution one of the country's top-performing schools. To everyone's surprise, Wajin openly praises the teacher and even thanks him for helping him prepare for exams through online lectures years ago. Despite his admiration, Wajin privately questions Mr. Cheon about the assault. The teacher refuses to discuss the matter, leaving the team with more questions than answers. Hanrim turns her attention to the student responsible, Park Hyeonung. Rather than defending himself, Hyeonung remains cold and indifferent, insisting that Hanrim punish him however she sees fit. Even after speaking with multiple students and staff members, the team struggles to understand why one of the school's brightest students would suddenly attack a teacher. The mystery deepens when Gunda reveals that Hyeonung consistently ranks at the top of his class. Frustrated by his silence, Hanrim threatens to contact his parents, triggering an unusually emotional reaction. Hyeonung lashes out, forcing Hanrim to restrain him. As the investigation continues, Mr. Cheon explains his side of the story. He claims that he created special classes to help struggling students catch up academically. According to him, Hyeonung viewed those lessons as a waste of time because he was already outperforming everyone else. Mr. Cheon also recalls visiting Hyeonung's parents after they failed to attend a school meeting, insisting that he cannot understand why the student suddenly turned against him. Hyeonung tells a very different story. According to him, everything in his life began falling apart shortly after Mr. Cheon became involved with his family. His parents' restaurant unexpectedly went out of business, and the private tutor who helped him maintain his academic success suddenly stopped teaching him. Convinced that Mr. Cheon played a role in both events, Hyeonung believes the teacher has been sabotaging his future. Hanrim finds his story convincing and urges Hwajin to consider the possibility that a teacher may be the real problem this time. Their disagreement quickly becomes personal when she accuses him of blindly defending teachers because of what happened to Ji-yoon. Hurt by the accusation, Hwajin tells her that if she no longer trusts him or Gangsuk, she is free to leave the bureau. While tensions rise within the team, Gunda digs deeper into Hyeonung's past. During his investigation, he visits a private academy connected to the case and unexpectedly reunites with Hyung-ju, Songhwan, and In-beom. Seeing the former rivals getting along brings a smile to his face and serves as a reminder that some students really can change. That evening, Hanrim reflects on her argument with Hwajin while running laps to clear her mind. Memories of her own childhood come flooding back. Years earlier, Hwajin had rescued her from school bullies and encouraged her to seek help rather than suffer alone. The memory reminds her why she joined the bureau in the first place. The following day, Hwajin finally pieces together the truth. He discovers that many of the school's wealthiest students attend the same elite academy and receive guidance from the same network of influential parents. Despite lacking those advantages, Hyeonung consistently outperformed them all. Hwajin realizes that Hyeonung's success threatened a carefully maintained system designed to benefit privileged students. His suspicions soon focus on a wealthy student named Jung Soo-jong. If Hyeonung were suspended, she would immediately move into the school's coveted top 10 rankings. Hwajin also uncovers a troubling connection between Mr. Cheon and previous cases handled by the ERPB. A flashback reveals that Hwajin visited Yiri in prison after her arrest. During their conversation, he learned details suggesting that Mr. Cheon had manipulated and influenced students long before the current investigation. Armed with this information, Hwajin confronts Mr. Cheon directly. Although the teacher denies every accusation, his confidence begins to crack when he learns that Hyeonung will not be suspended. His panic soon proves justified. In secret, Soo-jong's mother meets with Mr. Cheon and pressures him to secure her daughter's place among the top students. To fulfill his promise, Mr. Cheon provides her with the answer key for an upcoming exam in exchange for money. At the same time, Hanrim learns that Hwajin's admiration for Mr. Cheon was nothing more than an act designed to gain his trust. Realizing she misjudged him, she apologizes, and the two quickly put their disagreement behind them. Before they can make their next move, however, disaster strikes. Police officers suddenly arrest Hwajin and Hanrim over allegations of assault connected to previous ERPB investigations. Government offices are raided, Gangsuk is accused of financial crimes, and political opponents launch a coordinated attack aimed at destroying the bureau. Hwajin immediately suspects that Mr. Cheon and his powerful allies are responsible. He predicts that the arrests are merely a tactic to keep the ERPB occupied until the school's exams are completed. While sitting in custody, Gangsuk unexpectedly agrees to approve Gunda's transfer request, much to Gunda's surprise. The following day, Soo-jong confidently enters the exam hall, believing she already knows every answer. Her confidence quickly disappears when she discovers that the exam questions no longer match the answer key she memorized. Meanwhile, Hwajin, Hanrim, and Gangsuk are released and immediately return to action. As the exam begins, Mr. Cheon desperately attempts to stop it, claiming that the papers have been tampered with. What he doesn't realize is that the ERPB anticipated his scheme long ago. A flashback reveals that on the night of their arrest, Gunda secretly switched the exam papers after overhearing Mr. Cheon's conversation with Soo-jong's mother. The revised questions rendered the stolen answer key completely useless. With nowhere left to hide, Mr. Cheon's entire operation begins to unravel. Hwajin and Hanrim expose evidence showing that Soo-jong cheated using the leaked answers. They also reveal recordings of Mr. Cheon accepting bribes from wealthy parents in exchange for academic favors. Even then, Mr. Cheon refuses to confess. His denials continue until overwhelming evidence leaves him with no escape. At the same time, Hanrim prevents Sujong from destroying the evidence written on her hands. Elsewhere, Gangsuk faces his critics during a heated Board of Education meeting. While opponents present accusations against the ERPB, Gangsuk responds by unveiling the results of the Chukming investigation. He exposes Mr. Cheon's corruption and reveals that several influential figures, including board member Lee Cheol-mayan, were involved in the scheme. Gangsuk reminds everyone that the ERPB was never created to protect only teachers or only students. Its purpose is to protect victims, regardless of who is responsible for harming them. The revelations send shockwaves through the education system. Mr. Cheon is arrested, wealthy parents involved in the bribery scandal come under investigation, and travel bans are issued to prevent them from fleeing the country. With the truth finally exposed, Hyeonung thanks Hanrim and the ERPB for believing in him when nobody else would. Later, Wajin pays one final visit to Mr. Cheon and takes him to see Yuri in prison. Consumed by anger, Yuri lashes out at the man who manipulated her and ultimately destroyed her future. Faced with the consequences of his greed, Mr. Cheon is finally forced to confront the damage he has caused. A heartbreaking crisis unfolds at Hyeongjung Elementary School when first-grade teacher Choi Ji-seon reaches her breaking point. Alone in the school's playroom, she prepares to take her own life and sends a final message to her mother, asking her to read the diary she has been keeping. Fortunately, help arrives before it's too late. Hanrim intervenes and ensures that Ji-seon undergoes a psychological evaluation. The results reveal severe emotional exhaustion and dangerously high levels of stress. Realizing how close she came to tragedy, Hanrim insists that Ji-seon take a leave of absence and focus on her recovery before returning to the classroom. The story then looks back at the events that pushed Ji-seon to such a desperate state. Not long after beginning her career at Hyeongjung Elementary School, she meets a student named Eugene and his mother. At first, the parent seems supportive and simply asks Ji-seon to help improve her son's confidence. Wanting the best for her student, Ji-seon gladly agrees. Over time, however, the mother's behavior becomes increasingly obsessive. She constantly contacts Ji-seon outside working hours, floods her with messages, monitors her social media accounts, and begins commenting on her personal life. The harassment gradually escalates from concern to control, leaving Ji-seon emotionally drained. When she reports the situation to the principal, she receives little support. Worried about upsetting parents, the principal advises her to ignore the messages and avoid conflict. Despite the lack of help, Ji-seon continues doing everything she can for Eugene. Determined to help him overcome his social difficulties, she creates a special playroom where he can feel comfortable expressing himself. Her efforts pay off as Eugene slowly becomes more confident and begins interacting better with his classmates. Watching his progress becomes one of Ji-seon's proudest achievements. Unfortunately, the situation takes a turn when Eugene reacts aggressively after another student accidentally pushes him. A confrontation between the two families quickly follows. Rather than addressing her son's behavior, Eugene's mother lashes out at everyone around her, creating tension between the parents and placing additional pressure on Ji-seon. Things spiral even further when Eugene's mother begins appearing outside Ji-seon's home and filing formal complaints against her. The accusations become increasingly outrageous, eventually including claims that Ji-seon behaved inappropriately toward Eugene and even sexually harassed him. The allegations leave Ji-seon completely stunned. Although Eugene's mother promises to apologize if the investigation clears her name, the damage has already been done. Eugene's father soon arrives at the school, aggressively confronts Ji-seon, and threatens her in front of others. Meanwhile, private information about the teacher is leaked online, including her phone number. Before long, Ji-seon is overwhelmed by endless phone calls, public scrutiny, and constant fear. The pressure becomes unbearable. Feeling isolated and abandoned by the system that should have protected her, she decides to end her life in the very playroom she created to help her student. Back in the present, Wajin, Hanrim, Gunda, and Gangsuk discuss the case. They recognize that emotional abuse from parents is often invisible, making it one of the hardest forms of mistreatment for teachers to prove. Gangsuk points out that countless educators suffer silently because existing laws offer little protection against this type of harassment. While Hanrim and Gunda accompany Ji-seon to receive further treatment, Wajin takes over her classroom and begins investigating the situation firsthand. His first few days are far from easy. Managing a room full of energetic first graders quickly tests his patience and gives him a new appreciation for the challenges teachers face every day. After struggling through several exhausting classes, he gains a deeper understanding of just how demanding Ji-seon's job truly was. As his investigation continues, Hwa-jin decides to give Eugene's mother a taste of her own medicine. Rather than confronting her directly, he begins repeatedly contacting her with questions and updates, constantly interrupting her daily routine. The endless calls and messages quickly frustrate her, allowing her to experience the same pressure she once inflicted on Ji-seon. When she threatens to involve her husband, Hwa-jin visits the bank where he works and publicly calls out his behavior. The confrontation leaves the man embarrassed and powerless, especially after Hwa-jin refuses to be intimidated by his threats. For the first time, the school's principal also begins changing her approach. Instead of automatically siding with parents, she acknowledges that teachers are human beings who deserve protection and support. Han-rim encourages her to think like an educator rather than an administrator, reminding her of the responsibility she has toward her staff. Meanwhile, Gang-suk begins exploring policy changes that could provide better protection for teachers facing similar situations. As pressure mounts, Eugene's mother attempts to rally other parents to support her. However, Hwa-jin arrives before the meeting can begin and completely changes the conversation. Presenting evidence of her behavior, he files a formal complaint alleging that Eugene may be suffering emotional abuse at home. One by one, other parents begin speaking up about how unfairly she treated Ji-seon. Suddenly finding herself on the defensive, she realizes that public opinion is no longer on her side. When she attempts to contact Ji-seon directly, Hwa-jin intervenes and prevents any further harassment. Her frustration grows even more when she discovers that the man standing against her is actually an inspector from the Educational Rights Protection Bureau. Although she insists that everything she did was for her son's benefit, Hwa-jin argues that her actions caused devastating emotional harm to an innocent teacher. Amid the conflict, a touching moment unfolds between Ji-seon and Eugene. Wanting to make things right, Eugene reaches out and asks to meet her. During their conversation, he sincerely apologizes for everything his mother put her through. He also opens up about his own struggles and the anger issues that exist within his family. Ji-seon comforts him, reminding him that none of the situation was his fault. The conversation strengthens Hwa-jin's belief that Eugene genuinely cares about his teacher and trusts her more than his own mother realizes. Eventually, authorities begin investigating Eugene's mother for the emotional abuse she inflicted on Ji-seon. At the same time, Gang-suk publicly addresses the issue and promises stronger protections for teachers facing harassment. He also announces plans to expand mental health and medical support for educators affected by similar situations. As the case concludes, Gang-suk delivers a formal apology on behalf of the Ministry of Education, acknowledging its failure to protect teachers who have suffered in silence for years. Elsewhere, Hwa-jin finally gathers the courage to read Ji-yoon's diary. As he turns the pages, he discovers entries describing the problems she faced because of Cho Gyu-cheol long before her death. The revelation suggests that there may have been warning signs that everyone overlooked, setting the stage for painful truths yet to be uncovered. Hwa-jin becomes increasingly obsessed with uncovering the truth behind Ji-yoon's murder. As he reviews old evidence and revisits details from the case, he begins questioning whether Cho Gyu-cheol's stated motive was the whole story. Gang-suk notices his growing fixation and warns him not to let personal feelings interfere with his judgment. Trying to take a break from work, Hwa-jin heads out for dinner with Han-rim and Gunda. Their evening is abruptly interrupted when they spot a group of drunken teenagers stealing a car. While Hwa-jin moves to stop the theft, Han-rim rushes to help a frightened girl after one of the boys tries to force her into the vehicle. The teenagers speed away, turning the streets into a dangerous obstacle course. Hwa-jin pursues them while Han-rim chases after them on foot. After a chaotic pursuit, Hwa-jin successfully blocks their escape route, allowing Han-rim to seize the keys and bring the situation under control. Instead of showing remorse, the boys immediately hide behind their status as minors. They insist the incident was nothing more than a harmless misunderstanding because the car owner left the keys inside. At the police station, they continue playing innocent and demand to be released. Han-rim attempts to speak privately with the girl involved, but she refuses to cooperate and defends the boys despite everything that happened. While handling the situation, the ERPB team meets the boys' teacher, Mr. Lee, who arrives to act as their guardian. He apologizes for their behavior and admits that the students have become experts at exploiting the protections given to juveniles. To make matters worse, the boys retaliate by filing child abuse complaints against Hwa-jin, Han-rim, and Gunda. Fortunately, Gang-suk intervenes and secures the team's release. Rather than dropping the matter, He assigns them to investigate the 4 students, who all attend Hyunjin Middle School. From the moment they arrive, Wajin notices the boys' arrogance and complete lack of fear. They behave as if they are untouchable. Meanwhile, Hanrim interviews other students, only to discover that everyone is too afraid to speak openly about them. Determined to uncover the truth, she asks Gunda to find the girl from the previous night, Yoonjin. Following clues from social media, Gunda eventually discovers a photograph that leads them to a locked storage area. Inside, they find Yoonjin bruised, frightened, and clearly suffering from prolonged abuse. Once she feels safe enough to talk, Yoonjin finally reveals the truth. She explains that she once dreamed of becoming a K-pop idol and struggled with her weight. One of the boys, Jiyoung, offered her pills that he claimed would help her lose weight. After becoming dependent on the drugs, she found herself trapped in his control. Whenever she couldn't pay for more pills, Jiyoung forced her to work for him. The abuse only escalated from there. According to Yoonjin, the boys use other students to distribute drugs throughout the school, while constantly intimidating and exploiting anyone who gets in their way. She previously reported them, but after receiving only minor punishment, they returned even more vicious than before. Hanrim promises that things will be different this time. When confronted with the accusations, Jiyoung responds with mockery. Confident that the legal system will protect him because of his age, he sarcastically challenges the ERPB to arrest him if they can. Soon afterward, Wajin and Hanrim corner the boys outside the school and force them into a confrontation. Following Gangsuk's instructions, the entire group is transferred to a juvenile detention facility. The decision shocks everyone involved. Even the facility's warden worries about the backlash, but Gangsuk insists that conventional punishments have failed. If the boys refuse to learn from ordinary consequences, they will have to experience something much harsher. To ensure the lesson sticks, Wajin, Hanrim, and Gunda temporarily join the facility as guards. Hanrim wastes no time establishing control. When the boys refuse to cooperate, she openly challenges them to attack her if they believe they can overpower her. The confrontation ends exactly as expected, with Hanrim effortlessly putting them in their place. While Hanrim handles discipline, Gunda focuses on their education, tutoring them to ensure they do not fall behind academically. Wajin, however, has a different lesson in mind. He deliberately places the boys in situations where they become aware of the prison's most feared inmates, known as the Red Patch prisoners. The atmosphere immediately changes. Jiyoung learns that many of these inmates are convicted murderers and violent offenders. For the first time, genuine fear begins creeping into his voice. Simple tasks like washing dishes and following orders suddenly feel insignificant compared to the dangers surrounding him. Things become even worse after Jiyoung brutally attacks another inmate during a moment of frustration. Instead of fighting back, the inmate calmly promises to return the favor one day. Later, Wajin reveals the man's identity. His name is Kim Soo-jaeum, and he was imprisoned for killing the classmates who relentlessly bullied him during high school. The revelation leaves Jiyoung terrified. No matter how much he tries to provoke Soo-jaeum afterward, the inmate remains calm and simply promises that life inside the facility will become very uncomfortable for him. Outside the detention center, the boys' parents launch a public campaign against the ERPB. They accuse Gangsuk of abusing children and threaten to expose the bureau through the media. Rather than backing down, Gangsuk invites them to visit the facility and meet their sons in person. When the parents arrive, they are shocked by what they see. Their sons immediately break down and beg to be taken home. At first, the parents demand their release and accuse the ERPB of going too far. However, the conversation takes a dramatic turn when Wajin exposes the boys' involvement in drug trafficking. Jiyoung desperately insists that the pills are harmless weight loss supplements. To expose the lie, Wajin forces him to confront the reality of what he has been distributing. The pressure finally breaks him, and he admits that the pills are illegal drugs. Realizing the situation is far more serious than they expected, the parents attempt to resolve everything with money. They offer compensation and hope the issue will disappear. Gangsuk refuses to make the decision for them. Instead, he brings Yoonjin forward and allows the victim herself to speak. Looking directly at the people responsible for years of suffering, Yoonjin refuses to forgive them. She condemns the boys for turning her school life into a nightmare and destroying her dreams. Even then, Jiyoung attempts to charge at her in anger, only to be stopped instantly by Hanrim. With the truth finally exposed, the boys are sent back to juvenile detention despite their parents' protests. Gang-suk later announces his intention to pursue stricter laws for repeat juvenile offenders, arguing that students like Ji-young have learned to exploit weaknesses in the legal system. Hwa-jin delivers one final warning to the boys. If they continue down the same path, they may spend years behind bars until they are old enough to face adult prosecution. Afterward, Hwa-jin quietly thanks Soo Jae-yum and the other inmates for helping scare the boys into confronting the consequences of their actions. Just when it seems the case is finally over, a shocking incident unfolds inside the detention center. An inmate suddenly attacks Ji-young with a knife. Before the blade can strike its target, Cho Gu-cheol unexpectedly steps in and blocks the attack. Watching from a distance, Hwa-jin is left frozen in disbelief as the man responsible for Ji-yoon's death reappears before him. The aftermath of the prison incident leaves Hwa-jin face-to-face with the person he hates most, Cho Gu-cheol. While recovering from his injuries, Gu-cheol offers an apology for Ji-yoon's death. However, it quickly becomes obvious that his words are empty. Rather than genuine remorse, Hwa-jin sees someone who still refuses to take true responsibility for what he did. Later, Gang-suk checks on Hwa-jin and worries about how the encounter has affected him. Knowing how deeply Ji-yoon's death still haunts him, Gang-suk reminds Hwa-jin to stay focused on the work ahead. Their attention soon shifts to a new case when a desperate father named Lee arrives at ERPB headquarters seeking help. Mr. Lee explains that his son, Lee Jae-yoon, has gone missing after becoming addicted to online gambling games. What began as a harmless hobby quickly spiraled out of control. Jae-yoon spent enormous amounts of money chasing virtual rewards, forcing his family to pay off a debt of nearly 85 million won. Even after everything his parents sacrificed to save him, he eventually fell back into the same addiction and accumulated even more debt. Desperate to stop him, Mr. Lee destroyed his son's phone. Unfortunately, Jae-yoon simply borrowed another device from his friend Song-bin and continued gambling in secret. Before long, he disappeared completely. Determined to uncover the truth, the ERPB sends Gunda undercover to Nakwon High School. There, he befriends Song-bin and quickly realizes that gambling addiction has spread throughout the student body. What appears to be a simple mobile game is actually a gateway into a dangerous network that preys on vulnerable teenagers. After hearing Gunda's findings, Gang-suk promises to work with government agencies to crack down on gambling platforms that target minors. Meanwhile, Hwa-jin instructs Gunda to go deeper undercover by joining Song-bin's circle and playing the games himself. At first, the plan seems simple. Using Song-bin's referral code, Gunda signs up and begins gambling. Early victories make the experience exciting, and before he realizes it, he starts chasing bigger wins. The excitement quickly turns into frustration as losses pile up and his addiction begins mirroring the same trap that consumed so many students before him. When Gunda tells Song-bin about his losses, Song-bin introduces him to a group of loan sharks willing to provide easy money. The offer sounds tempting until Gunda discovers the brutal reality of their lending system. Due to outrageous interest rates and hidden fees, even a relatively small loan can grow into a financial nightmare worth tens of millions of won. Later, Gunda reports everything back to Hwa-jin and Han-rim. While discussing the situation, Han-rim receives a threatening call from the loan sharks demanding repayment. Unfazed, she bluntly tells them to do whatever they want with Gunda, leaving him visibly nervous. The following day, Gunda waits for the criminals while Han-rim keeps watch nearby. Despite trying to act confident, he repeatedly asks her not to leave him alone. Unfortunately, a brief distraction proves costly. While Han-rim steps away for a moment, the loan sharks abduct Gunda along with several other students trapped in debt. Before they confiscate his phone, Gunda manages to throw it out of the vehicle, creating the only clue that might lead the ERPB to him. When Han-rim realizes what happened, panic immediately sets in. Meanwhile, the kidnapped students are forced into criminal activities to repay their debts. The gang orders them to steal from stores, rob strangers, and participate in illegal operations under constant threats of violence. As Hwa-jin and Han-rim review surveillance footage, Gang-suk uses his political connections to identify the vehicle used in the kidnapping. Han-rim blames herself for Gunda's capture, but Hwa-jin reminds her that guilt will not help them find him. At the gang's hideout, Gunda finally discovers what happened to Jae-yoon. Alongside several other teenagers, Jae-yoon has been forced into working for the criminals. The students spend their days sending spam messages and recruiting new victims into gambling schemes while enduring endless abuse. Determined to contact the ERPB, Gunda secretly attempts to send a message through one of the gang's computers. Before he can succeed, Jae-yoon stops him and explains that every device is heavily monitored. Their conversation is quickly interrupted when gang members notice them talking and brutally punish Jae-yoon. Wanting to protect him, Gunda volunteers his technical expertise and offers to repair the gang's server systems. His skills immediately attract attention. Impressed by his abilities, the criminals bring him directly to their leader, who orders him to build a secure proxy server for their operations. Although Gunda appears cooperative, he is secretly looking for an opportunity to help the ERPB locate the hideout. Elsewhere, Jae-yoon's condition continues deteriorating. Exhausted from endless work and repeated beatings, he eventually collapses. Back at headquarters, Hanrim brings Songbin in for questioning. While examining the gambling website, she notices something unusual hidden within the code. Gunda has secretly embedded Morse code messages throughout the system. After decoding the message, the ERPB finally obtains the gang's location. Without wasting a second, Wajin and Hanrim launch a raid on the hideout. The rescue operation quickly turns into a disaster for the criminals. The two former soldiers tear through the gang members with overwhelming force. Hanrim is relieved to discover that Gunda is safe, while the kidnapped students are finally freed from the nightmare they have been living. While Hanrim remains behind to secure the victims, Wajin heads straight for the gang leader. The criminal attempts to flee, but Wajin catches him and unleashes all of his anger over the suffering the organization caused. Furious over the lives ruined by gambling addiction, he delivers a brutal beating before handing the man over to authorities. Soon afterward, the loan sharks are arrested, and Jae-yoon is rushed to the hospital for treatment. Hanrim apologizes to Gunda for failing to protect him, promising that she will be more careful in the future. Later, Jae-yoon's father personally thanks Gangsuk and the ERPB for bringing his son home. During the aftermath, Wajin reveals that Songbin had knowingly worked alongside the gambling operation. He sits both boys down and explains that addiction hurts far more than the person gambling. It also destroys the families who love them. Rather than simply punishing them, Wajin encourages Jae-yoon and Songbin to rebuild their lives and repay the sacrifices their parents made for them. As part of that lesson, the two boys are put to work scrubbing dishes and learning the value of honest effort. Even then, Hanrim notices that Gunda seems a little too interested in gambling despite everything that happened. Concerned that the undercover mission may have affected him more than he admits, she drags him to Wajin for a counseling session as well. Elsewhere, political tensions continue rising. Gangsuk encounters his longtime rival, Hwang Ji-tae, whose influence is beginning to decline. Frustrated and desperate, Ji-tae accuses Gangsuk of exploiting Jae-yoon's death to advance his political ambitions. Gangsuk calmly fires back, suggesting that Ji-tae should worry less about him and more about members of his own party who are already questioning his future ahead of the next presidential election. The comment strikes a nerve. Realizing his political position may be slipping away, Ji-tae begins searching for a way to destroy Gangsuk once and for all. His investigation eventually leads him to the one person capable of reopening old wounds, Cho Gyu-cheol. Determined to use Jae-yoon's tragic death as a weapon, Ji-tae secretly meets with Gyu-cheol and begins discussing how they can bring down Gangsuk and everything the ERPB has built. A nationwide crackdown on student drug abuse puts schools on high alert as reports emerge that the ERPB is conducting blood and urine tests across the country. Among the schools under scrutiny is Sunjin High School, one of South Korea's most prestigious prep schools and a well-known pathway to medical school. While monitoring a qualification exam, the ERPB notices something troubling about a student named Jung Hyun-min. In the middle of the test, he suffers a severe nosebleed and nearly collapses from exhaustion. Instead of letting him rest, his mother wakes him up and gives him a pill, insisting that he return to the exam room and finish. After the exam, students are asked to remain for drug screening. The decision immediately sparks outrage among parents, especially Hyun-min's mother, who complains that the testing is interfering with valuable study time and private tutoring sessions. Despite the backlash, Wajin refuses to back down and makes it clear that any student who avoids testing will face consequences. Elsewhere, Ji-tae visits Gyu-cheol in prison. The two men begin discussing ways to bring down both Gangsuk and the ERPB. Around the same time, media outlets start airing accusations against Wajin, claiming he assaulted a juvenile student, further increasing pressure on the bureau. At the hospital, where students submit their samples, Hyun-min receives his exam results. Despite earning a respectable B grade, his mother reacts with disappointment. Rather than praising his effort, she blames him for not taking his medication properly and accuses him of ruining years of hard work. Her harsh words leave Hyun-min crushed under the weight of expectations. The story then reveals how things reached this point. Years earlier, Hyemin's mother became obsessed with securing a place for her son at Seoul National University. After learning he was falling behind his peers, she uprooted the family, moved them to Gangnam, hired countless tutors, and structured every aspect of his life around academic success. Sleep, meals, hobbies, and friendships all became secondary to studying. No matter how hard Hyemin worked, however, the results never matched his mother's expectations. Desperate for an advantage, she turned to other ambitious parents and eventually learned about medication that supposedly improved concentration. What began as a shortcut gradually evolved into something much darker. The stronger the drugs became, the better Hyemin's grades appeared, convincing his mother that she had found the solution. While she celebrated his academic improvement, she completely overlooked the emotional and physical damage the drugs were causing. Back in the present, Wajin gathers the parents and reveals the truth. The pills being distributed are ADHD medications obtained illegally, without proper authorization. Not only have the parents broken the law, but they have also exposed their children to serious health risks. The situation becomes even more alarming when doctors review Hyemin's test results and discover signs of severe drug abuse. By the time the ERPB tries to locate him, both Hyemin and his mother have vanished. The team eventually finds them hiding at home. Even after learning how dangerous his condition has become, Hyemin's mother remains focused on the upcoming CSAT examination. She keeps her son isolated and pressures him to continue studying. Desperate to cope with the stress, Hyemin reaches for more pills. Before he can take them, Hanrim breaks into the apartment and stops him. Wajin then confronts Hyemin's mother directly. Although she insists she never intended to harm her son, he refuses to accept her excuses. He points out that she ignored every warning sign because she cared more about academic success than her child's well-being. In his eyes, she was willing to destroy her son rather than accept the possibility of failure. As a result, Hyemin's mother is placed under house arrest while Hyemin is admitted to the hospital for treatment. Recovery proves far from easy. Hyemin endures painful withdrawal symptoms and finally opens up about the years of pressure he has carried. He admits that he spent most of his life chasing a dream that was never his own. The drugs became the only thing keeping him going, and more than once, he considered ending his life altogether. Gunda listens without judgment. Instead of focusing on grades or future careers, he encourages Hyemin to discover what truly interests him. Together, they visit the hospital library, where Hyemin begins exploring books and subjects he actually enjoys for the first time in years. Meanwhile, Wajin decides that Hyemin's mother needs to understand exactly what she put her son through. He forces her to follow the same exhausting routine she imposed on him, limiting her sleep, controlling her schedule, and subjecting her to the same relentless pressure she once considered normal. The experience finally begins to open her eyes. Eventually, Wajin brings her to the hospital to see her son. Even then, her first concern is whether he plans to continue preparing for medical school. This time, Hyemin finally speaks for himself. He tells his mother that he no longer wants to become a doctor, and that his priority is recovering and finding his own path. More importantly, he asks her to stop living through his future and start thinking about her own life instead. His words leave her speechless. Later, Gang-suk publicly addresses the growing problem of academic drug abuse. He announces new measures aimed at preventing students from using illegal substances to gain an advantage during major examinations and promises stricter oversight moving forward. As the case comes to a close, Wajin studies the drugs confiscated during the investigation and notices a detail that reminds him of something written in Jae-yoon's diary. The discovery raises new questions about a larger operation working behind the scenes. Elsewhere, one of Gyu-cheol's associates complains that the ERPB is disrupting their drug business. Freshly released from prison, Gyu-cheol reveals his next move. He intends to return to school. And with that announcement, a new threat begins to emerge. Angry parents and members of the public gather outside Jinwon High School, furious that the school has allowed Gyu-cheol, a former juvenile convict, to return as a student. The protest quickly grows into a full-blown public outcry, with people demanding answers from the school, the Education Rights Protection Bureau, ERPB, and the government. As the pressure mounts, the ERPB is forced to defend its decision, while officials continue to refuse any clear explanation about why Gyu-cheol was released and allowed back into the classroom. Wajin meets Gyu-cheol and makes his position unmistakably clear. He is not there as a friend or supporter. From this point on, Gyucheol will be monitored closely to ensure that his return to school does not cause further trouble. Inside the classroom, however, the atmosphere is tense and hostile. The other students openly call him a murderer and treat him like an outcast. But Gyucheol remains calm and silent, carefully observing the people around him and taking in every detail of school life. Not long after, Gyucheol appears at the ERPB with a surprising complaint of his own. He claims that a student named Jang Song-gu is being bullied. Han-rim immediately suspects that Gyucheol may be trying to manipulate them or stir up trouble. But Hwa-jin refuses to dismiss the report without checking it. When he questions Song-gu directly, the boy insists that nothing is wrong and that he is fine. Even so, Hwa-jin notices something suspicious. Song-gu's classmates are constantly using his mobile hotspot every day to play online games, and Song-gu seems far too nervous to object or set boundaries. Sensing that something deeper is going on, Han-rim and Gunda decide to investigate in secret. Their search leads them to a cybercafe, where they uncover disturbing evidence that changes the entire case. Lee Chi-ho and his friends have been using Song-gu's internet connection and online accounts to scam innocent people. They have been taking advantage of Song-gu's access while leaving him to bear the consequences. When one of the scam victims eventually comes looking for revenge, Song-gu is beaten up for a crime he never committed, making him look guilty in the eyes of everyone around him. The situation becomes even worse as the pressure on Song-gu continues to build. When he asks Chi-ho for the money he was promised, Chi-ho refuses to pay him and acts as if Song-gu is the one causing problems. Their families become involved, but Chi-ho twists the story to protect himself and makes Song-gu appear dishonest and untrustworthy. Feeling cornered and exhausted, Song-gu finally gathers the courage to tell Hwa-jin the truth about everything that has been happening to him. Before Song-gu can fully expose the scheme, Chi-ho makes the first move. He files a bullying complaint against Song-gu, turning the victim into the accused and shifting all suspicion onto him. During the school violence committee hearing, the process is deeply unfair from the start. Everyone seems to side with Chi-ho, and Song-gu is repeatedly asked to prove his innocence while the evidence against Chi-ho is ignored or brushed aside. Even Chi-ho's lawyer suggests that Song-gu should simply apologize so the matter can be closed quickly. Watching the hearing unfold leaves Han-rim furious at how blatantly the system is being manipulated. As Song-gu loses hope and disappears, Hwa-jin eventually finds him and promises that the ERPB will not abandon him. Determined to expose the real bullies and prove what has actually been happening, Han-rim goes undercover as a transfer student. She quickly earns Chi-ho's trust, allowing him and his friends to use her Wi-Fi and social media accounts without suspecting a thing. Her calm, friendly behavior convinces them that she is an easy target, and they begin to reveal their true nature around her. The trap works exactly as planned. While Chi-ho and his friends believe they are taking advantage of Han-rim, Gunda secretly hacks into their phones and turns the tables on them. He makes them experience the same kind of scam and humiliation that they forced Song-gu to endure. Day after day, the boys are dragged into the same frustrating and embarrassing situation, and the pressure finally gets to Chi-ho. Unable to control his anger any longer, he explodes at Han-rim in front of everyone. That reaction is exactly what the ERPB has been waiting for. Han-rim immediately reports Chi-ho for harassment, and this time Hwa-jin arrives with solid evidence that cannot be ignored. When Chi-ho angrily denies everything, Hwa-jin reminds him that these are the same lies he used when he framed Song-gu. He then reveals Han-rim's true identity as an undercover ERPB inspector, exposing the entire setup and leaving Chi-ho stunned. With the truth finally out in the open, the balance of power shifts completely. Hwa-jin shuts down the biased school violence committee for failing to investigate the case fairly and for allowing the process to be twisted from the beginning. Chi-ho and his family are publicly humiliated, while Song-gu is finally able to clear his name and escape the false accusations that have been hanging over him. Song-gu and his mother thank the ERPB for standing by them when no one else would, and even Gyucheol thanks Hwa-jin for believing the report he brought forward in the first place. Just when it seems like the case has been resolved, the story takes a dark and shocking turn. After school, Chi-ho confronts Gyucheol and accuses him of betraying him. A flashback reveals that Gyucheol had secretly encouraged Chi-ho to file the false bullying complaint against Song-gu from the very beginning, setting the entire chain of events in motion. Furious that his life has now been ruined, Chi-ho blames both Gyucheol and the ERPB for everything that has happened to him. His anger, humiliation, and desperation boil over in a single moment. Without warning, Gyucheol pushes Chi-ho off the school rooftop. The horrifying incident spreads across social media within minutes. shocking students, parents, and the public alike. Rumors and panic spread rapidly as everyone tries to understand what happened and why. What had seemed like a victory for the ERPB suddenly turns into a crisis far more dangerous than anyone expected. The next morning, Gyucheol calmly visits Ji-tae's office and leaves behind part of a voice recording in which Chi-ho blames the ERPB for ruining his life. Ji-tae is stunned as he begins to realize the terrifying truth. Gyucheol had planned every step of this from the very beginning, including arranging his own release from prison. What looked like a simple return to school was actually part of a much larger and more dangerous scheme. Ji-tae rushes to the hospital, where Chi-ho is fighting for his life. Holding the recording in his hand, he accuses Gang-suk and the ERPB of driving a student to attempt suicide, turning the entire situation into a public scandal. The fallout from Chi-ho's rooftop fall continues to haunt the ERPB. While reviewing the case, Hwa-jin and Gunda discover that the available CCTV footage fails to reveal what truly happened that night. The cameras only show Chi-ho speaking with someone shortly before the incident, leaving more questions than answers. As the investigation deepens, Hwa-jin confronts Gyucheol directly. Convinced that Gyucheol is manipulating events to dismantle the ERPB and revive his growing drug operation, Hwa-jin accuses him of exploiting students for profit. The confrontation quickly becomes personal when Gyucheol speaks disrespectfully about Ji-yoon. Unable to contain his anger, Hwa-jin punches him. The incident spreads across social media almost instantly. Public opinion turns against the ERPB, and the Bureau is forced to suspend its operations. Sensing an opportunity, Ji-tae uses the controversy to attack everything Gang-suk has built. Students who once cooperated with the ERPB begin siding with Gyucheol instead, viewing him as a victim rather than a criminal. A flashback reveals the truth about Gyucheol's past with Ji-yoon. Unlike most people, Ji-yoon never gave up on him. She constantly encouraged him to attend school, leave behind his life of crime, and build a better future for himself. Although he found her persistence irritating, her belief in him never wavered. Rather than changing, however, Gyucheol chose a different path. He began using fellow students to distribute drugs, hoping success would finally convince Ji-yoon to leave him alone. For a brief moment, he believed he had outsmarted everyone. Then Ji-yoon discovered the drugs hidden in his bag. Realizing what he was doing, she immediately threw them away. Furious that she had interfered with his plans, Gyucheol lost control and stabbed her. In a single moment, he murdered the teacher who had spent years trying to save him from himself. Back in the present, Gyucheol wastes no time taking advantage of the ERPB's absence. With no one actively watching him, he recruits students such as Song-gu and expands his drug operation throughout the school system. Students are offered commissions for transporting and selling narcotics, and before long, the network begins spreading rapidly. Song-gu soon realizes how dangerous the situation has become. More and more students are becoming addicted, not only to the drugs themselves but also to the money earned from selling them. Horrified by what he sees, Song-gu attempts to contact Hwa-jin for help. Unfortunately, Gyucheol and his associates stop him before he can expose the operation. What nobody realizes is that Hwa-jin has been planning several moves ahead. His attack on Gyucheol was never simply an emotional outburst. By allowing the ERPB to be temporarily shut down, he creates an opportunity to investigate Gyucheol's network from the shadows and uncover its full extent. To carry out the plan, Hwa-jin secretly recruits people whose lives were changed by the ERPB. Gang-suk reaches out to teachers from previous cases and asks for their assistance. One by one, they agree to help. Among them is Ms. Choi, who quickly joins the operation. Together, the teachers begin collecting evidence and confiscating drugs hidden throughout the schools before delivering everything directly to the ERPB. At the same time, Han-rim and Gunda go undercover. Working behind the scenes, they gather intelligence from students involved in the distribution network. Gunda even enlists Song-hwan and In-beom to help disrupt Gyucheol's business. By placing massive fake orders, they drain his supply and prevent countless students from getting access to the drugs. The strategy works. Before long, Gang-suk publicly exposes the existence of Gyucheol's operation, allowing the ERPB to officially resume its investigation at Jinwon High School. The team moves quickly. As Hwa-jin searches the campus for evidence, Gyucheol and his closest associates attempt to escape before authorities can close in. During the operation, however, an unexpected complication arises. Han-rim accidentally inhales some of the confiscated drugs. The effects hit almost immediately. Disoriented and unable to think clearly, She charges directly at Guqiol's associates and attacks them. Gunda is forced to stay behind and help her recover while Wajin continues pursuing Guqiol alone. Despite her condition, Hanrim gradually regains control, allowing Gunda to focus on supporting the ongoing operation. Meanwhile, Wajin fights his way through wave after wave of Guqiol's followers. Cornered and desperate, Guqiol decides to use Songgu as leverage. He threatens to have the student killed if Wajin continues pursuing him. Moments later, he lunges forward with a knife. Wajin refuses to back down. As the confrontation escalates, one of Guqiol's associates attacks Songgu. Without hesitation, Wajin throws himself between them and takes the stab wound himself to protect the student. The sacrifice buys enough time for Hanrim to arrive and stop the attacker. Enraged but still in control, Wajin turns his attention back to Guqiol. Years of pain, grief, and anger finally explode as he overwhelms the man responsible for Ji-yoon's death. Guqiol desperately tries to provoke him, repeatedly mentioning Ji-yoon's final moments in an attempt to push Wajin over the edge. This time, it doesn't work. Instead of giving in to hatred, Wajin chooses something Ji-yoon herself would have wanted. He tells Guqiol that if he ever truly regrets his actions, he should try to rebuild his life rather than continue destroying the lives of others. Soon afterward, Guqiol is arrested once again. Gang-suk initially handles the situation with remarkable composure, promising that justice will finally be served. However, the sight of Wajin badly injured proves too much for him. Overcome with emotion, he nearly attacks Guqiol himself before others intervene. Later, Gang-suk addresses the nation. In a heartfelt speech, he praises the teachers, students, and investigators who risked everything to protect the education system. He vows that the ERPB will continue standing beside victims regardless of whether they are teachers, students, or parents. After the case is finally resolved, Wajin and Gang-suk visit Ji-yoon's grave alongside Hanrim and Gunda. As they pay their respects, the two older men quietly notice the growing feelings between Hanrim and Gunda. The younger pair awkwardly avoid eye contact, making their emotions painfully obvious to everyone except themselves. Sometime later, Gunda attempts to follow in Wajin's footsteps. Dressing and acting like his mentor, he arrives at Kangju High School determined to teach a bully a lesson. Unfortunately, things do not go quite as planned. The student proves far more intimidating than expected, leaving Gunda struggling to maintain his confidence. Hanrim eventually arrives to help, but even together they fail to handle the situation properly. Thankfully, Wajin appears at the perfect moment and reminds them that experience cannot be copied overnight. Elsewhere, Jiaite finally faces the consequences of his actions. Authorities arrest him for his involvement with Guqiol and the criminal network. Even while being taken away, he continues threatening Gang-suk and promises revenge once he is released. Gang-suk has heard enough. For the first time in a long while, he abandons his usual calm demeanor and punches Jiaite squarely in the face, bringing an abrupt end to the man's rant.